It had been 2 years after he discovered the mission was just a way for the tallest to get rid of him, and 2 years since he stopped trying to take over Earth. He had a longer-ish black wig, more like a mullet with bangs, Don asked, as he was leaning on his locker, and you walk over to him and take his phone and see what he was doing. Hey, give me that back.
Cartman, what were you looking at anyway, huh? Searching through Zim's search history and interest.
No, don't. His cheeks go a bright green as he tries shoving you away from his phone.
Cartman. Oh my god! Are those pictures of bubbles? Bubbles around areas? Are you having a crush on a sugary blue Powerpuff Girl? This is surprisingly priceless.
His face goes green in embarrassment. I do not have a crush on Bubbles. It's just, she's cute. He mumbled, looking down at the floor as he tried to look anywhere, but you...
Cartman stops for a moment. He sighed. He sighs, softening and softening, annoyed in concern. Ugh. You were worried that I would tease you about your feelings for Bubbles, huh? Looking away, awkwardly softened. Look, I'm sorry. Okay? Okay? I was just too interested in what's up with you around Bubbles, and I thought it was fun and interesting for this relationship to be happening anyway. I mean, I thought Bubbles was the simp here. No offense to her.
He looked even more embarrassed. Yeah, I was worried about that, and it's all right, I guess. He was still looking at the floor, trying to avoid eye contact. He was really embarrassed about you finding out about his big crush on Bubbles, since he wanted to keep it a secret, and never wanted you to find out.
Cartman sighs softly. Ugh, if you're a bit stubborn, no offense, then why don't you go talk to her? Go talk to her. In fact, she would be the only one being flush, stubborn to talk to you. Why don't you just go off flirty and talk to her? It's no big deal, since she's the only one to be nervous all over you anyway. In fact,
He blushed even more at what you said. His antennas perk up and move more because he's more flustered. I can't just go flirty with her. What if she doesn't like me back? He said, still looking away from you, embarrassed.
Cartman, trust me, I can tell she does. She does, by the way, that she's flustered all over you. She's definitely crushing on you. She was afraid you wouldn't be interested in her back.
His face was bright green. He was very surprised that Bubbles was crushing on him back. But then why is she always all nervous around me? He asked, looking up at you, then looked back down to the floor.
Cartman, because she's desperate to impress you. She doesn't know how to respond or say around you. Considering you wouldn't be interested at all, she's just worried about how you'll react to her when she's around you.
He thought for a moment. He was surprised and a bit flattered that Bubbles was desperate to impress him, and he thought it was cute that she wouldn't know how to respond, say, around him. He blushed at the thought of her trying to impress him, and that she was worried about him not being interested in her. So she actually likes me? Actually likes me? He mumbled more to himself than you.
Cartman, yep, she loves you a lot. She's always flustered every time she's around you. She thought you think she's weird if she's around ya, and also worried that she's like the rest of the humans here, not interested or stupid, but she's proving that she's not.
She loves me a lot, really, he mumbled again to himself. He couldn't believe what you just said. That Bubbles actually likes him and loves him a lot. He never thought he'd be so happy to have a crush on someone and that they love him back. But he's still but conflicted on what to do now, since he doesn't know how to confess to her.
Cartman, you just got to play off natural like nothing happened. Get seductive with her. I'm sure she'll be able to have the chance to confess her feelings to you, dude.
He blushes at the thought of being seductive with Bubbles. That's probably the last thing he ever thought he'd hear. He was also a bit anxious and flustered about the idea. How do I do that, though? I've never been seductive before.
Cartman, well, just sound low and romantic. Try to swoon her with sexy comments and compliments about herself and give hot affection on her, like feeling touches, kisses, and hugs, etc. I'm sure this will be the right moment for her to confess immediately.
He blushes as he listens to you. He's more flustered now than before. He's never really done anything seductive before, and just the thought of it, he's anxious and blushing. So I just talk to her in a low and romantic voice and give compliments and hot affection, and then she'll confess? He mumbled nervously.
Cartman nodded. Yep, especially gotta be playful with her too. It's easy to make someone flush like that.
Okay then, I got this. I'll make her flushed and playful and then she'll confess, he thought to himself. He was still a bit nervous just thinking about this, but he was also excited to make Bubbles feel flustered and to get her to confess to him. He was excited and ready to put this in motion. Okay, I'll do it. I'm gonna make her confess.
Cartman, there she is. She's right around the corner of her locker. Remember, playful and seductive and flirty with romance, and give her some make-out affection. Make-out affection, just act natural. Bubbles, sighing a bit from her locker, trying to calm down, keeping a adorable composure and concerned.
He looks in the direction where Bubbles' locker was and was a bit nervous but excited. He took a few deep breaths to calm himself down. He then walked over to Bubbles' locker. Hey there, Bubbles, he said in a low and slightly seductive voice.
Bubbles. Oh, hey there, Zim. I didn't expect you to show up.
He chuckled a bit at how flustered Bubbles was. Now he was really excited for this. Well, I came to visit you. He walked closer to her, trapping her between the locker and himself.
Bubbles giggles a bit, trying to keep herself calm to confess as she looks at him, her big blue eyes sparkling with glee. That's sweet. I like that.
He smiled, looking down at her with her beautiful blue eyes. He then leaned down slightly to get closer to her face. Yeah? And I like being around you, he said in a more seductive and low voice as he put a hand on her cheek.
Bubbles. Oh, you're really handsome. You're really handsome, man. I mean, cool. Yeah, cool. Cartman snickering a bit from Bubbles' reaction. I knew it. Just as I predicted, Bubbles would react around Zim. Would react that way around Zim. Remember, Zim, hot romantic comments. Bubbles. So this is awkward.
He chuckled hearing Bubbles, watching her get flustered and mess up trying to call him cool. He was definitely enjoying watching her get all flustered and mess up her words. Huh? Cute, he thought to himself before speaking again to Bubbles. Oh? What's awkward, hun? He said in a slightly seductive voice as he looked into her eyes.
Bubbles. Just this moment?
He smirked a bit at her stuttering and mess of words, then leaned in a bit to close the gap between the two of them. Yeah? Just this moment? I don't think it's awkward, he said in a low and seductive voice, basically hovering over her and had his hand on her waist.
Bubbles.
He smirked. He was so close to her, and he was loving watching her get more flustered. He brought his other hand to her hip and was now pinning her against the locker. He leaned down slightly to be more at her level and looked into her eyes. There's no need to be nervous or anything, he said in a seductive tone as he caressed her hip with his thumb.
Bubbles. I think your pack is sparkly, neat. It's pretty and I love it.
He chuckled hearing this. He was starting to figure out that when she tries to act calm, she just stumbles over her words. It was cute how she got the conversation all off track just to admire his pack. Yeah? Will you like my pack? He said in a seductive tone and continued to caress her hip with his thumb.
Bubbles. Yes, your high tech is neat and interesting, and I love it. It's sparkly and shiny as well.
He chuckled again. He's never really had someone really admire his pack except for maybe Gaz that one time. He found it adorable that Bubbles liked his pack, but he wants her to get more flustered and confess to him. Really? You love it? Why? He said as he leaned in a bit more closer to her face, looking down into her eyes in a somewhat seductive manner.
Bubbles. Because it's really neat, fitting your ability, and I love that. Cartman. Ooh, it's a sign, dude. Keep going. Keep it up.
He smirked. She was getting more flustered by the minute, and it was absolutely adorable. He enjoyed knowing that she liked his pack, and he loved being up close to her like this. He moved his hand up from her hip to her waist and was basically holding her against him. As he leaned in even more closer to her face, he could practically see the fluster in her eyes. You love it, huh? He repeated in a seductive voice.
Bubbles nodded awkwardly.
He smirked watching her awkwardly nodding, but the flustered look on her face was so cute. He moved a hand up to her chin and lifted it slightly. He leaned into her until they were almost touching, and he spoke in a seductive voice. You're adorable when you're like this, you know that, honey?
Bubbles. Zim, there's something I want to tell you.
He was really excited at this. He was getting her flustered and in a position to confess to him. He put a finger on her lips to stop her from finishing her sentence and spoke again in a low and seductive voice. Oh. What is it you want to tell me, honey? He said as he caressed her cheek with his thumb.
Bubbles. Well, you see, it's just, I love Cartman. She's saying it.
He moved his finger that was on her lips away. He put both his hands on her waist as he spoke in a seductive and low voice with a slight smirk. Yeah? You love? Go on, say it, he said. He was excited to hear Bubbles finally confess to him. He's been wanting to hear this all day.
Bubbles. I love you! Immediately closed her mouth in embarrassment and panic. Cartman. Yes!
He smirked hearing what she said and how embarrassed and panicked she got after saying it. He chuckled a bit and found it cute how she looked flushed over the fact that she confessed to him. But he pulled her closer, basically pinning her to him against the locker. Huh, I knew you loved me, he said in a low and seductive voice. He was so happy to hear her finally confess to him.
Bubbles, you're not rejecting me?
He chuckled a bit as she said that. The fact she even thought he would reject her confession was cute. He was loving how flustered she was, and he still had her pinned against the locker against him. Why would I reject you when I've been wanting to hear those words from you? He spoke in a sweet, seductive, and low voice.
Bubbles, you love me too?
He chuckled again at how surprised and shocked she was. He brought his hand and caressed her cheek affectionately. He had a smirk on his face and spoke in a low and seductive voice to her. Of course I do. I've had a crush on you for quite a while now. I thought it was obvious.
Bubbles. Same here. I thought you wouldn't be interested in me since you're, well, Zim. No offense, I'm just being honest.
He chuckled a bit. He was actually surprised to hear that she thought he wouldn't be interested in her. He found it adorable that she thought that, and felt a bit bad that he never made it obvious that he was interested in her. Huh? You thought I wouldn't be interested in you? Well, I was. It's why I always tried to get your attention.
Bubbles. I always try to impress you and get your attention too. But I thought you might find me weird and stupid like other humans you think they are. No offense, I swear.
He chuckled a bit. He found it adorable that she was trying to impress him and get his attention, though he was kinda upset that she thought he'd find her weird or stupid. He put a hand on her cheek, caressing it affectionately, and spoke in a gentle tone. I don't think you're weird or stupid. You're cute and adorable, and I like you a lot. No offense to the rest of the humans, of course. He chuckled a bit, seeing her reaction of smiling and blushing. He leaned down a bit so that they were eye to eye and close together. He spoke in a seductive and low voice as he moved a hand to her waist. Did I make you speechless, honey?
Bubbles, a bit so. What now, since we confessed to each other?
He smirked. He was still feeling a bit seductive and flirty, so he thought he'd jokingly tease her a bit. What's next? Well, I was thinking maybe this, he said as he leaned down a bit and gently kissed her neck.
Bubbles immediately flinched, surprised, and immediately kisses him by the lips passionately.
He was a bit surprised by her kissing him all of a sudden, but he quickly recovered from it and responded with the same amount of passion as her. He deepened the kiss to get more of her kisses as he moved his hands to her hips and grabbed them, bringing her closer to him.
Cartman watches this in thrilled surprise, Bubbles continuing to kiss, feeling melted and relaxed.
He continued the kiss, feeling her respond immediately and bring him into a passionate kiss. He gripped her hips tighter as he leaned her back more against the locker. He took her lower lip in his and bit it gently as he deepened the kiss. Cartman watched this with a surprised but entertained look on his face. He's never actually seen Zim getting so romantic. He didn't want to stop the heated kiss since he's been wanting this for a long time now, but he forced himself to break the kiss to catch his breath. He looked at her. The flushed and breathless look on her face made him want to continue, but he decided to tease her a bit. Phew, you're very excited, honey, he said in a low and seductive voice.
Bubbles, how did that feel to you?
He chuckled a bit. He was enjoying this a lot. He felt so happy to finally have her like this in his arms. He looked down at her with a smirk. It felt very good, he said in a low and seductive voice, and caressed one of her hips again as he held her against the locker. He smirked as he saw the smile in her face and chuckled a bit. He was really enjoying watching her like this. He leaned in again, speaking in a low and seductive voice. You're definitely excited, aren't you?
Bubbles, yeah. So we're dating?
He chuckled a bit at her excitement. He honestly loved this side of her, and he's been wanting to hear those words from her all day now. So he didn't deny them now. Yeah, I guess that means we're dating. You're mine now. He smirked. He really liked that she basically agreed that she was his now, and he was going to have a good time with her as his GF. He gently caressed her hip and spoke in a low and seductive voice to tease her a bit. And that means I get to do whatever I want to you anytime I want to.
Bubbles, oh? Like what? Do some affection or make out or something? Cartman,
He chuckled a bit. He was starting to get ideas on what he wanted to do with her, and they all involved doing the same things they've just been doing, but in private. He smirked and spoke in a seductive voice to tease her. Oh, yeah, things like that, like this. He leaned in and began to place kisses along her neck, biting it a bit.
Bubbles.
He continued to kiss along her neck and bite a bit, enjoying hearing and feeling her reaction. He brought a hand slowly up to her side, rubbing her side before gripping it gently yet firmly, pushing her more against the locker to get closer to her. Huh, is this all right with you, honey?